Thank you for being with us this evening, Marcella. I'm excited to hear your presentation about the healthy principles of eating. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Well, I'm a third-generation plant-based eater, and I'm a retired foods and nutrition high school teacher, and I'm a cookbook author of a cookbook.
Well, let's just get right into it then and hear what these healthy principles are.
Okay, we can all use good healthy eating principles, can't we?
I think so.
And we start with the most important meal of the day. Do you know what the most important meal of the day is?
I've been told it's breakfast.
Yes, it is breakfast. So we'll begin with the importance of eating a healthy, hearty breakfast. Some people are skipping dinners, skipping breakfast and eating big, heavy dinners, but we want to make the point that eating a healthy breakfast is the most important. Eat like a king for breakfast, eat like a prince at noon, and eat like a pauper in the evening. So you eat very little at night, because it's like you're going on a daily journey, you know, every day of your life. When we travel on vacation, we don't wait till we get to our destination before we fuel up the gas tank, do we? No. So we need to fuel up our fuel for our bodies at the beginning of each day as the most important meal. So I brought some things to kind of show and to get the point across.
Well, let's go for it. What have we got here?
So we have a nice sample breakfast here of a hearty breakfast, and you'll see it's a big bowl of cereal, and some people say, oh, I could never eat that much for breakfast, but you get used to it. If you skip suppers a few times, you'll get used to the fact you'll be hungry for breakfast after a while. So we have some granola, some whole grain granola here, but I often make hot oatmeal or quinoa or, you know, some of those 5-grain flakes or something that you cook up. We also have fruit. You need like 2 or 3 fruits for breakfast. We have banana, orange. This is a kiwi here. There's whole grain toast with peanut butter and some fruit and some kind of low-fat non-dairy milk or some skim milk, dairy milk or something, and you have all of the food groups needed at one meal.
So in a meal like you have here, how many grams of protein would that supply?
Well, at least probably more than 1. I mean, like 8 grams would be just in a cup of soy milk, and then you'd have the grains and the nuts. There's some walnuts in here, and then there's the grains that have probably like enough for double.
And then
serving.
you've added the peanut butter as well.
And then there's peanut butter and the grains. You have no problem getting enough protein at all. So the first principle of healthy eating then is to eat like a king for breakfast. And the reason for that is because your body has gone the longest period of time without any fuel, because it's like breaking the fast. That's what the 2-part word for breakfast means, is they're breaking a fast. And so your body's in a greater need for nourishment than at any other time of the day.
I just came from a conference where a researcher had looked at the diets of people who had a greater percentage of people who lived to be more than 100 and lived well more than 100. And what they found was consistent across all the groups that they looked at was that there was at least 12 hours from whatever they ate at night to whatever they ate the next day. At least a minimum of 12 hours.
Well, that is true. And so we want to show you a few things here that make good meals. And you want to look at the labels. When you're going to eat healthfully, you need to become a label reader. And you know, every package has the ingredient list. And if we have one word that we would call a key word for healthy eating, it would be WHOLE, which is whole. And that's the word you're looking for at the very top of the list on the ingredients, because then you know that nothing's been removed, nothing's been added. It's the whole natural grain, just the way God made it and the way it comes from the land, and that's the way that your body can use it the best. Because all these ingredients and the nutrients, they need each other as a package deal. You know, if you had a football team and some of the players are missing, the team probably is not going to win the game. But if you have all the team members present, that's when you're leading the pack. And so this W-H-O-L-E word, in this box of steel cut oats, it's just whole grain steel cut oats, and they put a little flaxseed in here and a little salt, and that's it. And if you can't pronounce the names of some things, it might be something added that is not exactly a whole food. So that's one of the key things, is to eat a hearty breakfast. Now, what kind of bread are you going to keep in the house for making toast and for having sandwiches for your meals?
Well, let me take a look at these ingredients here. I'll bet it's on here somewhere. Let's see here. It says unbleached, enriched flour.
All right, so if it just says flour and it doesn't have that W-H-O-L-E word, that means that it's not necessarily whole grain. It's white, which means some of the...
But it says enriched.
Yes, it's enriched with about 5 different nutrients out of the 24 or 30 that there are available, so it's not totally enriched.
So if I took $20 from
Yes.
you and I gave you 5 back, you wouldn't feel enriched,
Wouldn't feel
would you?
enriched. No, it wouldn't.
So,
Wouldn't indeed.
So now let's try this one here. Let's see. I'm going to look at this one. It says ingredients. Whoa, this is going to be tricky because it says organic sprouted wheat, but there's no whole
Oh, well,
wheat on
if it's sprouted wheat, you have to sprout from the whole wheat. So, and this is all very natural ingredients, and there's more than just wheat in here. There's barley and millet, and they're also sprouted. So you're really getting a powerhouse.
Well, it does say sprouted 100% whole grain bread.
That's another thing to look for, is the 100% correct. And do you know, if you figure it out, because this bread is just the white starchy part, and a lot of the nutrients have been removed, it takes about 10 slices of white bread to equal 1 slice of the whole grain bread, as far as some of the B vitamins are concerned, as the niacin and the biotin.
You could gain a lot of weight with 10 slices,
right.
couldn't you?
So it's really important, if you're going to spend money to nourish your family, that you get the quality bread and the grains and the whole grains,
But
with
sometimes-
everything present in
Sometimes
there.
my patients will say to me, but the whole wheat bread is so expensive.
Well, you pay for what you get, so you're not getting the nourishment, and that's why you buy food, to eat it in the beginning, right? So we want to pay attention to read the labels. All right, and then there's another healthy eating principle that we emphasize for healthy living, and that is to eat regularly scheduled meals every day, 2 or 3 regularly scheduled meals, because you know your digestive juices come out at set times if you space your meals kind of similarly every day, so that you don't just grab something one day at 10 and another day at 12, or you know, just pick all day, or your body gets used to the schedule. You know, God designed everything to be in a rhythm and a schedule in nature. And you can get those little books that are tide tables, and you know when the tides of the ocean are going out and when to expect them to come in. And everything in God's design is in orderly sequence. And so that's the same way it can be with our eating plan. If we get our bodies used to eating at certain times, you'll notice that your hunger pangs start, you know, your stomach starts growling, because it knows it's just about time to eat if you do it in a regular way. So scheduling your meals at the same regular times is another healthy eating principle to remember. And then we don't want anybody just grabbing a bite and running and doing all kinds of things on the run. You need to sit down and relax and allow at least 20 minutes to just calm down and enjoy what you're going to have for your meal, and it'll digest better. And another healthy eating principle is to have at least 5 hours between your meals, so that each meal has time to digest and then rest before the next one is introduced. And that's an important one, and I thank the Lord that I was raised that way. As our parents were very methodical in that, so I didn't have to unlearn any bad habits. But another important thing is not to eat between meals, and I've had people say that's the toughest thing for people to change when they're learning new ways to have their lifestyle. It's just hard to give up just picking and eating between meals. So that's part of a healthy eating plan, is to just eat at mealtime and nothing between, except of course water. It's better not to drink and dilute everything at mealtime with water. It's better to have your water between meals. And how many glasses of water? That's another one of the health principles. We have these 6 cups sitting out here to illustrate that, you know, a good amount of water a day, 6 to 8 glasses is an ideal plan. And we don't want to count Coca-Cola and Pepsi and coffee and all those things, just good, fresh water to keep your system going. And then when you are eating, another one of the healthy eating principles is to chew your food well. I remember my dad would always say, now you got to chew each bite about 20 times. And you know, believe it or not, when I was using different home economics textbooks, they say that, to chew every bite at least 20 times. And I was amazed that they even had that for the textbooks for the students in the high school. But that is a best way to get the digestive juices mixed with your food so that it will do a thorough job of digestion. Okay, we want to keep our meals simple. In other words, instead of having potluck and having 10 or 12 different things, it's good to have like 2 or 3, 4 different varieties of foods at the meal. And we have this plant-based vegetarian eating plan called My Plate that's available, and we're going to put that up here on the screen for you to see. And it is a wonderful guide for everyone to have, and LLBN could probably have some information for you on how you can receive these. They're put out by the General Conference Health Department of Seventh-day Adventist, and we make these available to help people to know how to plan their meals adequately. And the foods are divided into the 4 food groups, and that's vegetables, fruits, proteins, and grains. And it tells you kind of the number of servings that's ideal for different age groups, and boys, girls, older women, men, and things like that. And on the back side, it gives you all of the serving sizes, so you know how much is a serving, and the foods that are in each group. So this is a wonderful guide for planning your daily meals so that you know how to plan balanced meals for your family. And keep it simple with 3 or 4 different kinds of foods at the meal. And that's also mentions to be sure you're drinking your water. So there's a lot of these nice healthy principles. You know, there's some people that will try medicines and they're not curing things, but then they'll come finally to our cooking classes and our New Start classes and go through all of the laws of health that God has designed. Get your proper exercise, get your proper diet, and rest, and sunshine, and fresh air, and all of these different health principles. And they just see great results. We've just finished an 8-session series up there where I'm from in Oregon, and the people have really been amazed at how much they've gotten off some of their diabetes meds. Have you experienced that with your patients? I know you advise your patients in a similar way, don't you?
Yes. And it's true that a lot of people say, do I have to be on this medicine my whole life, when they're talking about diabetic medications, certain diabetic medications and blood pressure medications. And really and truly, if a healthy lifestyle is adopted, some of these medications, you can drop the numbers. Sometimes people can get off of some of them altogether. Mm-hmm.
Yes, we have a dairy farm down the road from us that has about 800 head of cattle, and I tease the dairyman all the time because he's a little heavy, and but he said, I could never be a vegetarian like you are and eat plant-based foods. You gotta have milk, you know. to be healthy enough. So for several years I teased him about that, and then one day he got a heart attack, and then he had to be rushed to the hospital. And so after a few weeks and he was able to come home, he came and he told me, you know, I guess you were right all this time. And so we still joke about it a little bit, but he's really learned that you're changing your lifestyle. And I've been able to share with him a few of these health principles that he's been able to implement into his diet, into his life. One of the things that we want to do is to limit all of the fatty spreads and butters and margarines and oils and Crisco and all these kinds of things that we put on, and try to get our fats from avocados and olives, and just keep the amount of fat limited, the oils and things, and a little olive oil, you know, in your foods. But when we teach our classes, we try to encourage people to just use the whole foods as much as possible, and then you don't gain weight as much, because you know there's 100 calories in every teaspoon of free oil or fat or that, and it adds up quite quickly.
I asked one of my patients once if he knew how many ears of corn it took to make a teaspoon of margarine, how much corn oil to go into it. And because, you know, we consider corn oil to be a fairly good oil. And the only person who's ever been able to answer that correctly was actually a hog farmer. He actually knew, because it's between 15 to 26 ears of corn for one pat of margarine, which is roughly the equivalent of the amount of grain that a cow would need to eat to, you know, and then you get the milk, and then you get the cream, and then you get the butter. And when people understand that, they realize how compacted those calories are.
Yes, and it just is amazing how you can cut your weight down and cut the amount of calories that you take in. That's why we have so many overweight people, probably, because they aren't realizing and how many calories you take in. It's so easy when you're going to fast food places a lot. The worst of all offenses, I understand, is overeating. So we don't want to just gorge ourselves on second and third helpings just because it tastes good, but we want to eat to the point where we're satisfied but not gorging ourselves. And that's one of the other healthy eating principles to remember too. Well, what about fresh fruits? And vegetables? What do you tell your patients about that?
Well, I keep things simple. So most people know that they should be eating vegetables. I don't even worry about that very much, but when I have done dietary recalls on patients that I see in my office and in the hospital, 24-hour diet recalls, or having them keep a food diary, what I've found is that most people in the United States do not eat sufficient fresh fruit per day. So my first health principle for people when I'm going over them when they're coming to me when they're ill is that they should have at least 3 cups of fresh fruit. I don't go with servings. It's a little too hard for me to figure out. I go with cups. And most people can understand an apple, an orange, and a banana.
Absolutely.
And, you know, one strawberry is not a cup, so it's more than one strawberry, for example. But if they eat a variety and they're having a goal of 3 cups a day, it's a step in the right direction for a good, healthy diet.
I asked our mailman one day when he came to my door, we had so much fresh fruit, I was giving him some. Oh, no, thank you, I don't eat fruit. And I thought, oh my, you don't eat fruit? What do you eat? It's so important to us that are in the health field, because we know that it's so valuable. I don't know how people live without fruit and vegetables. It's my favorite thing. And then it's good to garden if you have a chance, because then you're outside working and you know what you're getting, and it's not sprayed, and it's just fun to be able to combine. And of course I know I'm spoiled now because we get to live in the country, and we have plenty of room to garden and things like that. So Another point that we want to be sure to mention is the amount of salt we take in, because a lot of your prepared TV-type dinners and packaged foods that people that are in a hurry purchase from the supermarkets, they're pretty high in sodium. And I think you've been talking to your patients about that as well.
The latest studies show that the amount of sodium that we should be getting is less than 3 grams. We had in the past said 4 grams. It's pretty hard for most people to get that, and I get complaints when I put patients who have illnesses that require me to put them on a low sodium diet, which is 1.5 to 2 grams of sodium. They don't like it, but their blood pressure comes down.
Oh, it does. It makes a big difference. And, you know, we get so used to salt, everything when you're cooking in the kitchen. I don't know if you're, cook a lot from scratch, but everybody wants to just salt everything quite heavily. And so I've made a special point to try to cut back my own salt intake and just learn to enjoy things with their natural flavors instead of so much salt. Because salt is actually a flavor enhancer. That's what it is.
Well, it is, but you can get used to lower salt. It actually, I've told people that it takes 4 to 6 weeks to upregulate your salt receptors on your tongue. I have had this happen with patients who, for many reasons, so pregnant women, for example, were limited on salt. They'll do it then.
That's
and
good.
At the end of pregnancy, they'll tell me that they have been craving potato chips. So they went and got their potato chips once they weren't pregnant and spit it out because it tastes so salty.
They didn't realize
because you do accommodate. It doesn't taste right to start off with, but you can accommodate.
Yeah, and you just have to be determined to stick it out for those few weeks until your taste buds can kind of change.
So I did want to mention how much salt 2 to 3 grams of sodium is, and that's roughly a half a teaspoon a day.
So if you try to keep track, that's not very much compared to what most people are using, 8 to 15 grams a day, and that's way too much. And then there's a lot of salt in pickles and some spiced up kind of preserved foods like that. So you just need to kind of cut back on some of those high processed foods too. Well, what do you tell your patients about eggs? You know, they say that eggs are the highest source of cholesterol in the American diet because people so readily eat those for breakfast. There's probably 250 to 300 grams of cholesterol in an egg.
Well, the science originally, because it has so much cholesterol in it, we told people that they needed to eat fewer eggs. When they've actually fed people eggs and looked at their serum cholesterol, it doesn't seem to have much effect, really. So it's really more important to cut down on their total fat in their diet and to be really careful about that. But I agree with you, they shouldn't be eating a dozen eggs a week.
Well, it's good to just learn to have variety too. Variety is another word I like to emphasize when I'm teaching cooking classes, because not variety all at one meal, but a variety of different grains, nuts, seeds, and foods throughout the week and the month. And so I'd like to use a variety of the foods, and then you don't get bogged down with just a few things like that. How about the cheeses and the aged cheeses? We tried, that's kind of high in cholesterol sometimes too. So anyway, we're just about out of time here, and I would just like to summarize a little bit here by just encouraging everyone to take a look at how you're eating and to look through your cupboards and learn to read labels when you're shopping. And I like to recommend also that you plan your meals a week at a time, because if you have a little time to sit down somewhere and have your grocery list and you're scheduling your meals and putting down what you want to serve, you won't impulse buy when you go to the store, and you will be able to have healthier meals throughout the week and the month, and you probably save on your food budget as well. And so Can you think of anything else we need to remind ourselves and others of about for healthy eating principles?
A lot of times people have said to me that eating healthfully is very expensive, and really and truly, if you're very careful in your choices, it actually is not more expensive, because you can buy the fresh fruits and grains and skip the processed foods, which are often much more expensive
They
anyway.
are. That's a good point, too. So we want to try to eat WHOLE whole foods and keep our meals simple, and eat our heartiest meal in the morning and eat light at night. You know, it takes about 4 to 5 hours for one meal's food to digest and be on its way through the digestive system. And so then if you eat before that time, then it's just bogging down the digestion. So we need a space in time there for our bodies to rest and to be ready to have a nice meal the next time.
Well, thank you so much for presenting these principles.